we talk about scaling, there's one topic that we can't get around, and that's the economics behind it. And that's basically where I want to start the discussion with you guys, because I know just how much everyone loves exposing their business case on stage in front of a great audience. So let's get right to it. There's one use case that has also been mentioned in the previous panel that is dominant in Europe these days, and that is the use case you are all currently working on, which is AVs as part of a public transport offering. And I want to stick to that for a second, because there's a big promise that is one of the main drivers and motivators behind exactly that use case, and that is the promise of cost reductions in the long term. And my perception is that those cost reductions go beyond the promise that might be attached to savings occurring due to driver costs and labor costs, and that there is an increasing focus also on the cost of the vehicle itself. People do expect those costs to go down in the foreseeable future, and that leads to a misconception that I would like to dig into a little bit when it comes to the price tag that we actually also attach to realizing that use case in Europe. It makes a lot of sense to me that coming from the old world where vehicles and driver costs were the main cost buckets, that people ask that question first when they think about what will deploying AVs in Europe cost us. They immediately jump to the question of where are the vehicles right now and what can we expect in terms of price decreases here. And that will be the price tag put on that deployment. But maybe, Rainer, you can help me unwrap that a little bit. Why is asking about the vehicle price maybe no longer the right proxy in order to assess the real costs of deploying AVs as part of a public transport offering, or is it?
I brought a little Excel. I can show our business case here right away if you want. No, I won't. So the point is, that's a very good question, because whenever we meet potential customers all over the world, the first question is, how much is the car? It's not about a car. It's about much more. The car, in our pricing scheme, the car is just a minor point, because we have to do a lot of things with these cars. We have to know what they are doing. We want to manage them in the right way. We want to use the asset in the best way possible. And we also want to provide a transportation service that is most efficient. We want the cars to be at the right point at the right time, because they have that flexibility. Yeah, they are not bound to driver times or working times. They are very flexible. They are autonomous. So let's just use this and make the most out of these assets. And that's, I think, the point. So the question is not how much is the car, but how efficient and how valuable can we make this service that includes a car, yes, for sure. But at the end, it's really about how well can we operate the overall system. And this is what we are working on, and what is a very valuable part of the overall offer.
And I think the value of it is one side of the story. But Yong, if I can move over to you, I find it quite interesting, because when you remove the driver, you basically remove the most important intelligence layer of operations. And to be honest, in Europe, yes, we have removed the driver, but we have a lot of safety drivers in place. So a lot of those tasks are still being performed by some sort of driver, a human being. And I think maybe that also leads to underestimating how much needs to change, and also how much needs to be solved from a cost perspective when you actually remove that layer of operational intelligence. You speak from experience, having launched, or your company at least, having launched a massive fleet of actual autonomous vehicles in China. What are your thoughts on that in a European context? Where are the hidden costs that we don't see and are not able to grasp yet?
Yeah, I think removing intelligent layer from by removing the driver, for that we get a much intelligent and much safer layer. That's the artificial intelligence. Regarding the cost, you mentioned about the cost reduction. I think before we reduce the cost, we need to firstly understand what are the costs. Certainly, like Rainer just mentioned, I think the vehicle is just one corner of the huge ice mountains. The real cost behind we cannot see yet. this exactly, I think, quite some pilot project, small project need to be found out together. If not, the vehicle is not the major cost point, what are the cost point? Then I think people tends to ignore the whole infrastructure, which is necessary to offering a quality, reliable L4 driverless service. The people need is not just one time to show that it works. It needs to be continued on a daily basis. We don't need to think about it if we take a driverless, if it's safe or not, if the price and so on. It needs just to be the same quality as we get used to. The public transportation we had today need to be better. Yeah. To the cost reduction, I think it's too early to talk about cost reduction. We need to find out what are the costs. That's exactly the value chain. I think we have the big picture of the value chain, but we need to deep into the details, not theoretically in the details, but in the praxis that we are operating in a daily basis to a large amount of fleets and to integrate it to the daily life. And then we can come back based on this experience and we can get out some theoretical thinking about cost reduction. That's my personal experience and opinion.
I think that's an excellent point. And before I move over to you, Hans, just a follow-up question to you on that one, Rainer, because am I being too strict with you guys if I say that we have a narrative problem in the industry? Because what you say, there's like two sides to market. There's supply and demand, and the demand side, as Charlotte pointed out, is asking for why should we invest in that? And I think we've made quite a strong point about cost reductions being part of that story, next to driver shortages that could be solved by AV deployments, and also, of course, the safety issue. But the cost argument has been made. So I think to a certain degree, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that, the industry has a job to do in explaining exactly what you said, because I think you're spot on there. But there's like there's a lack of understanding on the other side why that is the case and why it might be too early to actually look towards cost reductions and rather talk about quite heavy investments that are the more immediate step that seems to be in front of us. And I would like you to respond to that, and then I open the floor to you as well, Hans.
I agree with Yong. We need to try. I mean, we are discussing too much, especially in this part of the world. We are just talking. Charlotte just said the PTs, they talk a lot or lead a discussion about autonomous mobility in Europe. Yes, they are leading the discussion. But except for example, Rüter, who's doing a lot, I don't see a lot of activity. So we need to become more pragmatic and just do stuff, because only when doing stuff we learn how people are interacting with it. There will be with it, and we will basically understand only then what exactly this technology can do, how flexible it is, how much efficiency it can gain, and we can learn. Yeah? We need to imagine this is like the Wild West. Yeah? We are just coming from Ireland, Italy, Germany to New York, and there's this vast country in front of us with all the possibilities. And now we can go hunting, we can go into furs, we can build railways, we can build a farm somewhere in the middle of the country, and we can become rich or we can die. Everything is possible, and this is where we are right now. We are in New York, and we have this country in front of us. We need to understand how do we get there, how do we do it the most efficiently, and we have to start. If you get stuck in New York, it will probably not work. So we need to start, we need to get going and learn what's out there and how to make it valuable for us.
I just want to add two very concrete points. What does it mean for costs? Concrete situation, if Chelsea are playing with Arsenal today in the football stadium, is 50,000 audience there. If you want to, assume we have already L4 driverless operation there, you want to order a car. So put up your phone. How do you guarantee you get the connectivity to order the apps, and the apps get connectivity to the near vehicle to assign to you? And then we're talking about the connectivity, how to say, guarantee of your service. I want the service from A to B, just like I get used to. Jump into metro, I know it's coming in 2 minutes, and wait for them, and they arrive, right? We need to guarantee this kind of quality of service. Only that we have a chance of the commercialization. And this we need to solve, and this is the cost. Secondly, about data. Is every second generates parabits of data. Is on the vehicle, also on the cloud. We need to train the corner cases, not one time, but continuous during the life cycle of the L4, right? It's not one time by the vehicle. This is just the beginning, and that started the business and start also the cost, right? And this is twofold. One is the data storage, huge amount of data storage, and the data processing, the huge computing power you needed. I just stopped here.
Hans, yeah.
Yeah, I can just say, in terms of the narrative, I agree. We need to change that a little bit. And cost reduction is a thing in the future, maybe. But I think for now, for public transportation, it's much more about what Lucas mentioned of connection. It's that we can offer more mobility potentially with the same budget if we make the right investments. So at this stage, it's not about thinking we can do cheaper public transportation. It's about how do we invest in bringing more connectivity and more mobility to the future. That's the mindset we need.
And Hans, you're kind of like in the middle, right? You're in the middle between the PTA, the OEM, the SDS. Yeah, you're in the middle, literally as well, of course. You're perfect. In between the SDS provider, the OEM, the PTA, the communication, and the kind of like bringing things, making things real and working in that field is what you do on a daily basis. And when you hear about those, you address that, but when you hear about those promises in the further out future and you mirror that to your operational reality, what would you say is kind of the efficiency gains that need to happen on the way, and what is crucial in order to get there, and who may also play a role for you to be able to reach that level of efficiency beyond the three sitting on stage here?
Okay, that's a big question as well, but I'll say Nicola said it before as well, that operation in the end is hyper-local. So to create efficiency, we need to build a system where we can utilize the vehicles very, very efficiently, make sure they're placed the right ways around the city so that they can pick up the demand there is and so on, for example, but also in the operation, in the depots, needs to be extremely efficient. They need to be placed the right places around the city and so on. All of these things matter a lot. And on top of that, I would say that also part of the key safety, I mean, these guys are building products that are meant for global scale, but in the end, the safe application of them is hyper-local. And so we need these local organizations who are able to do continuous risk assessment of the operation with a local mindset to be able to implement these locally. And that we need to build in every city.
That is the perfect bridge over to the second topic I would like to discuss with you guys, and that's the actual scaling question. Because for all those benefits, if it's reductions or not in costs or anything else, value that you point to, Rainer, for that to be realized, we actually need to get to a certain scale. And that scale definitely looks different than 5 to 10 vehicles in a couple of cities around Europe, that's for sure. But I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on to what degree those pilots that we are engaged with and engaged in prepare us for the operational capabilities that we actually need when we talk about a fleet management operation. And I want to challenge you a little bit by throwing out a statement, and I'm curious to hear your reaction to that. But in my opinion, looking at that, if you have 5 vehicles, it's a qualitatively different operation than what we would call fleet management. You could still do everything manually. You can handle the vehicles almost on a one-to-one basis. If there's an incident, it's okay if the entire organization focuses on nothing but that one incident, because they happen so rarely, ideally not at all. And even when it comes to, and that's maybe the most important part, when it comes to depots and infrastructure, you can improvise a little bit. You can use a corner of an existing facilities. If you talk about 5 vehicles, you don't have to get on the hunt for the most attractive depot stations in central areas of some of the most attractive and expensive cities in the world. So to what degree are we prepared for those tasks that most definitely need to be handled when you talk about a fleet of the size of 200, 500, whatever the number might be, coming from the world that we all come from, the small-scale pilot world? Rainer, do you feel, coming from Volkswagen, a big in your back, you had the scaling idea with you all the way, or would you say there's, yes, you're nodding, then please tell us what that looks like in practice.
Yeah, of course. I mean, if you have an OEM in the background, they don't build a factory for 6 cars. They build factories for hundreds of thousands of cars. And that has always been the core of what we are doing. I mean, we are currently not in every country of this world and rolling out all kinds of projects everywhere because we are exactly focusing on being able to scale. So getting a type approval in Europe and similar approvals in the US to be able to roll out these vehicles. And we rely with our technology on local operators who we hand over the technologies to. And I agree with Hans, every country is different. The US is different than Europe. Europe itself, every country is different. As was pointed out in the first panel, we have different regulations, different backgrounds, different transportation systems, different transportation culture, so how people move is also very different per city, even in Europe. So we have to be very local in the way how we set up all these operations. We have our own operation in Hamburg. We learned a lot from this. We have 500 cars on the road. In many ways, those operations are very similar to what happens to autonomous cars on the hub. And I think one of the main challenges will be really so what happens inside the vehicles, because right now there are drivers in the vehicles who can help passengers, who can start rides, end rides, who know what's going on. And in the future we won't have that, so we have to come up with the technology to interact with the vehicle and to interact with the passengers in the vehicle. So this is another big challenge, and I think only when we scale this we will really understand how automated these kind of processes will work, because they require interactions with humans, and humans are complicated as they are, yeah. So they always have all kinds of strange ideas. So we will have to be able to deal with all these kind of activities that they start remotely. So there's no driver who can react very quickly if someone has a complaint or forgets something in the car or whatever it is. We need to be able to deal with this. And I think this is something we really need to try out at scale to really learn how to master these kind of services.
Good point, Yong. Baidu is operating at a scale in China that you're not even close to in Europe yet, and there's a whole different scaling strategy, I must call it, behind it. In Europe, you're going also through the PTA layer to find your way into the market. When you generally look at the European scaling path ahead of us, vertically versus horizontal, what are your thoughts on where do we actually should and need to be different from what we see in other markets, and where should Europe maybe as well be a bit more open-minded, look towards China, the US, and simply adapt a way of doing it?
Yeah, there are several aspects you just mentioned.
Yes.
I'll start with the first one. In China, there's successful stories. We would love to leverage the experience, also the expertise there, but we don't expect 100% carryover and expect the same will be copy-paste and have the same success. So I think we need we need a partner exactly to go this path, to say, okay, what we have already achieved, to which degree we can apply here in this market, which part we need to adapt, which part we need to add on, which we didn't have features we didn't have before. I think this from the company point which I stand for, to the scaling, I think scaling is the key step if we are talking cost reduction. That's why I just answered to your first question. It's too early to talking about cost reduction because we don't know yet. And then with scaling, we know it. We will know if we achieved scaling, And that's automatically means we have already the quality of service we have today, right? So people only want to transit to change their mobility behavior today if the offering for driverless is better. It needs to be better. It's equally good, it's not enough. It needs to be better, safer, and cheaper. And then there's motivation for people to change their behavior. And that we achieve the scaling to offering a reliable, sustainable over the whole life cycle and established into the daily life. Then we can talk about the reduction. I just mentioned the two, right? Data. I think we should really not underestimate the cost of the data. Today we are focused on the data compliance. So Chinese company coming, spy some data, stealing some data. Yeah, this is not the point, right? The point is, in order to meet the compliance, European has the highest data requirement on compliance. We need to fulfill that, not one time, but during the whole life cycle. That means data storage, access to the data, every seconds, real-time data, a lot of sensors, LiDAR, point cloud, and camera data, 11 or 13 cameras, and so on. The regulation need to access to all the data to evaluate and to audit it if something's happening. It will happen. Accident will happen. If it happens, and then not only regulator, but also insurance company, also the local police, and also operator and OEMs, we need all the data analysis. It's not just the Excel table is done, it's huge amount of data. So I think scaling, we need, my preference would be not studying, I know European market is very fragmented, so different cities has different, market specialities, specific requirements. I would not prefer to start as much as pilot as possible. Rather, at the beginning, we focused on several pilot projects and tried to make it right. That's what I called a vertical focusing our skill, and to go to the deeper to really solve the problem. What are the cost points, and to involve as complete as possible the eco partners to get them on board. Currently, I see only OEMs. I think this. Of course, that's the core contributor of the value chain, but we need more. We need much more, and get them together on board to move the whole business model forwards, to get a sustainable business case out of there. And then we can roll out geographically, and also business model is public transport or is private platform or some new business model. I don't know, but and then roll out horizontally and vertically.
Great. I just heard we have only 2 minutes left because this has been too exciting, so we've been carried away. But let me finish off with a very quick round, and I know you will manage that. Quick questions, quick answers. Hans, we're improvising here, but talking to you, if you were to pinpoint, let's say, the two biggest bottlenecks, and you are not allowed to say finance and regulations, the two biggest bottlenecks to actually getting from where you are to scale, what would that be?
Okay, not finance and regulation.
Nope.
No. Okay.
Operational.
Operationally, no. It's, if I can't say financing, it's getting over the investment hump to actually deploy and start providing a service. I would say, because what you said about the data. We need to gather a lot of data. It takes a lot to set up a new city. I talked to Waymo yesterday about London, right? They are spending a year, hundreds of vehicles, hundreds of people. Like that, getting over that hump to something that works and you can start thinking about providing a service with is the major key. And we can only do that in a couple of places, I think, to begin with, pilots maybe. But we need to do that, and we need to do it now in Europe.
Great. One sentence answer. From China, is it Wuhan to Appenzell in Switzerland? How much of your learnings and experience actually travels into that new market?
It's a long journey. We are right at the beginning. We are very excited about it.
Great. And the last one to you, Rainer. Hamburg to Oslo seems way closer culturally, technologically. Is it true, or is it still like a very heavy local investment starting from scratch?
Finance and scaling. No, it's of course we are Europe. Oslo has of course much more snow, which is very valuable for us. We have reliable snow conditions, so we can make sure our cars not only work in nice weather. So that's a big advantage. The other one is that I see that our partners in Oslo are very pragmatic, and this is also what I would encourage everyone here in Europe to be more pragmatic, to be more courageous, and to see opportunities rather than risks. And this is what I see a lot in Oslo, while in Germany we are often discussing things up and down until they have been taken over by others. So I encourage really to learn from Scandinavia. So I see a lot of good approaches there.
And that's the perfect finish for this debate.